Known for being a failed leader, disloyal to all, and one of the greatest national traitors in modern Chinese history, second only to his best friend,
Chen Gongbo has not been looked upon fondly in history. I'm his great-grandson, Connor Pyle, and I want to explore what made my great-grandfather's reputation the traitorous one it is today, and see if there's more to Chen Gongbo than the disloyal villain literature has made him out to be, starting from the beginning. Chen Gongbo was born in 1892 into a time of unprecedented instability. He was alive for the final decades of the declining Qing Empire, the final empire in China's several thousand-year-long dynastic era. In the latter half of the 19th century, the Great Qing had found itself in a state of economic, political, and cultural turmoil for a myriad of causes. The empire's political and economic influence had taken significant losses moving toward the turn of the 20th century after losing twice in the Opium Wars to the powerful British Empire in 1842 and 1860, and losing any footholds in Korea after being defeated by the rapidly expanding Japanese Empire in the First Sino-Japanese War in 1895, all within a matter of 60 years. To make things worse for the Qing Empire's already crumbling strength, in the midst of many military and economic failures, its own people had begun to turn against its rule. The Qing Empire made itself unique for being the only empire in Chinese history to be ruled by the Manchu people, a group which was ethnically separate from the Han Chinese population they ruled for well over 200 years. As the empire faced issues on the global stage in the 1800s, with Western empires expanding toward the east and the newly formed Japanese imperial project quickly encroaching on China's territories, the Han people of the empire began to turn against their long-standing Manchu rulers, making the collapse of the Qing Empire seem imminent as it approached the 1900s, before its full collapse in 1911. It was these final years of Qing rule that Chen Gongbo was raised in. Living his early years in southeastern China in the Fujian province, Chen Gongbo's earliest encounter with treasonous behavior would come at an age of 14 when his father, a general in the Qing military, was discovered to be an anti-imperialist revolutionary and was taken to prison by Qing troops. Chen Gongbo was forced to flee, writing the earliest of many recorded poems about leaving his family behind. Reading: Crossing the Shao Creek on a single horse, while the cold wind blows through the mountain gap. A few stars shining on the river rocks, while the falling moon illuminates the forlorn village. Escaping with my life without a safe destination, I would be ashamed to seek just a pure existence. I shall remember this night for the next 10 years, till I gallop across the middle China with a sword in hand. The rest of Chen Gongbo's early life prior to his political career is not well documented until after he graduated from Peking University, where he, like many post-imperial students, was first exposed to communism. For a short time after attending Peking University, Chen Gongbo founded a pro-communist newspaper named the Chun Post, with guidance from a professor from the university. Chen Gongbo's political career grew with the newspaper's popularity, and in 1921, he attended the first Chinese Communist Party Congress with his professor and wife, where he met with several influential CCP members, including Mao himself. This attendance made Chen Gongbo a small founding member of the Chinese Communist Party, which he would be a part of for less than a year before going to the US to obtain a master's degree in economics at Columbia University. While in New York, Chen Gongbo had a change of heart about his membership with the CCP, and upon his return to China in 1925, joined the nationalist Kuomintang Party. The Kuomintang was founded by Sun Yat-sen, the same leader that was greatly responsible for helping topple the Qing Empire 15 years earlier, in 1911. Following the empire's collapse, the Nationalist Party held a short-lived reign as the Republic of China, but its president Yuan Shikai's interest in returning to imperial rule caused the newly formed nation to fracture into a myriad of warlord-controlled territories, making way for the 1916 to 1928 warlord era. The fractured state of the nation left a need for a new power or political party to reunify China under a single government structure, thus beginning the long rivalry between the communist CCP and the nationalist Kuomintang as the two most powerful and influential political parties, both of which made an effort to clear the country of warlord rule. Chen Gongbo entered the Kuomintang at a time of great change for its leadership, as in 1925, the same year Chen Gongbo joined, Sun Yat-sen died, being replaced by Chiang Kai-shek. While in the Kuomintang, Chen Gongbo worked closely with and quickly befriended Wang Jingwei, who would play a major role in defining his career and later reputation. As accounted in writings from his son Chen, my grandfather, the two leaders got along very well, bonding over their shared Cantonese heritage and often sharing their love for poetry and drinking together. Although the Kuomintang and CCP initially worked together in eliminating warlord rule as the first united front, the power and influence they gathered in successfully clearing the country of warlords quickly turned the parties back into bitter enemies. The political conflict between the two major parties grew from a battle of propaganda into a nationwide war, as they eliminated warlords and gained territory. The warlord era came to an end in time for the start of the Chinese Civil War. Starting officially in 1927, the Chinese Civil War saw the CCP and Kuomintang become violent enemies as Mao and Chiang Kai-shek both became increasingly militant. Following his involvement in the 1926 to 1928 Northern Expedition, a nationalist military campaign meant to end warlord rule and suppress communist influence in northern China, Chen Gongbo's view of Chiang's leadership swayed toward disapproval after Chiang Kai-shek's leading of that and the Shanghai Massacre, in which all communists in Kuomintang-controlled areas were ordered to be killed. As noted in the diary of Chen Gongbo's son, Chen, these violent events planted seeds of doubt in Chen Gongbo regarding Chiang Kai-shek's leadership. Around the same time, Wang Jingwei and other more pro-peace nationalist leaders formed the leftist clique of the Kuomintang on a similar basis of defying Chiang's more violent methods, which Chen Gongbo would join. The early formation of the cliques in the party would lay down the groundwork for several defining moments for Chen Gongbo, Wang Jingwei, the Nationalist Party as a whole, and the final outcome of the Chinese Civil War. As the Civil War continued, casualties and costs rose for both parties until, in 1937, the Japanese Empire launched its invasion of China. Although the CCP and KMT disagreed on how they wanted to rule the nation, both parties agreed that they would not have the nation controlled by a foreign power like the Japanese. Weakened by their civil war, the parties knew they could not stop Japan independently, and thus formed an unofficial, fragile alliance to stop the Japanese advance. The formation of the Second United Front paused the Chinese Civil War as the conflict in China became involved in World War II and began the Second Sino-Japanese War. Although the conflict with Japan would put the Chinese Civil War on freeze until World War II was resolved, the Kuomintang's inner leadership remained divided, and within the party, conflict would continue. Wang Jingwei's decision to desert Chiang Kai-shek's leadership in 1937 had a major impact on the Nationalist Party. Wang moved to Nanjing, where he began forming a new government that he believed was more in line with Sun Yat-sen's original nationalist vision, with collaborative support from Japan. The reorganized national government of the Republic of China, commonly known as the Wang Jingwei regime, would be established in 1940 with its capital in Nanjing. Given the regime's strong ties to Japan, Wang Jingwei was placed in a precarious position in the eyes of Mao's CCP and Chiang Kai-shek's Kuomintang as a full-time collaborator with the enemy. Being a known associate of Wang Jingwei and the recently appointed head of the Nationalist Party in the Sichuan province, Chen Gongbo was given a difficult decision as his sympathies for Wang Jingwei's vision rose, while the support of Chiang Kai-shek continued to decline as tension rose between the nationalist rivals. Chen's writing describes Chen Gongbo's actions in Chiang Kai-shek's Kuomintang after Wang Jingwei's defection as, quote, politically aloof, until Chen Gongbo made the final decision to join his friend in 1938 to negotiate peace with the Japanese, cementing his place as a collaborator with Japan around 2 years before the Nanjing government was fully established. As the president of the nationalist government that rivaled Chiang Kai-shek's Kuomintang politically and Mao's CCP militarily, Wang Jingwei became a target. An assassination attempt was made on Wang Jingwei by Kuomintang agents, likely ordered by Chiang Kai-shek, in 1938, which is credited by Chen as another reason Chen Gongbo may have been convinced to join Wang's party. Upon joining, Chen Gongbo quickly rose up in the collaborationist government during the latter years of the Second Sino-Japanese War, being appointed mayor of Shanghai from 1940 to 1944, after Japan granted the Nanjing government nominal control of the city. It is made clear in Chen Gongbo's own writing that he was well aware that joining Wang Jingwei's government would put their careers and lives at risk, but he felt the need to help his close friend. Although the Nanjing government held together with support from Japan during the war, it would face several blows in its final years. First, in November 1944, Wang Jingwei encountered complications from the injuries he sustained in the 1938 assassination attempt and died, making Chen Gongbo the weakened party's de facto president. Second, in August 1945, the atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, bringing a swift end to the war in the Pacific with Japan's unconditional surrender. Chen Gongbo was in a dire situation and knew that the collaborationist Nanjing government would not survive. As described by Chen's accounts of the final days of the Nanjing government following the Japanese surrender, Chen Gongbo was advised by Chiang Kai-shek via one of his Nanjing generals to leave Nanjing instead of standing his ground to make toppling the government easier for Chiang's Kuomintang forces. Chen Gongbo made arrangements to fly to Japan with a small group of confidants and his wife, leaving Khan behind to hide with his godparents in Shanghai. Chen Gongbo left a letter to Chiang Kai-shek to inform the KMT leader he would return to the Chinese mainland upon request, likely aiming to make peace. After the request was approved by American occupational forces, however, the Nationalist Party had Chen Gongbo seized in Japan in October 1945 and brought back to China to be tried for treason. Chen Gongbo's death is easily the most well-documented part of his life, both for it being a politically significant moment for his enemies and a personally significant moment for his son Khan, who wrote a detailed account of his experience with his father's death in 1946. After being taken back to the mainland, Chen Gongbo was detained with other collaborators in Suzhou prison for several months. Chen Gongbo's extended stay in prison was due in part to the political dilemma Chiang Kai-shek was facing as the standing president of the Republic of China after World War II. Since the Kuomintang was still involved in the now resumed Chinese Civil War with the Chinese Communist Party, Chiang Kai-shek wanted to learn from the former Nanjing government officials' experience in successfully fighting off the communists to continue the war, while American occupational forces urged Chiang to form a coalition with the CCP instead. Chen's writing credits Dai Li, a close political leader under Chiang Kai-shek, for keeping Chen Gongbo and the other imprisoned collaborators alive in Suzhou by convincing Chiang of the political prisoners' usefulness in the Civil War, noting that soon after Dai Li was killed in a plane crash, Chen Gongbo was swiftly put back on trial for treason. Although he defended himself as acting in nationalist interests as a collaborator, Chen Gongbo's trial was swift, he was found guilty of treason and sentenced to death. When news came to Khan and his mother on June 3rd that Chen Gongbo was to be executed, they tried to appeal with no success. On the morning of June 4th, Khan was told to read the newspaper in which it was revealed that Chen Gongbo had already been executed the day his execution was announced on June 3rd. The day of the trial, Chen Gongbo was not informed that he would be executed once he was declared guilty, but newspaper stories collected by Khan infer that he was aware of the punishment he faced. Around 8:30 a.m. on June 3rd, Chen Gongbo was writing a couplet poem offering advice to Chiang Kai-shek, critiquing his militaristic intolerance toward the enemies, reading, "The huge ocean has the capacity to include many things. The bright moon remembers that it is not always full." He signed this letter before being taken out of his cell by prison guards, leaving his signature as the last calligraphy of Chen Gongbo's life. Chen Gongbo left his cell in a tidy condition before visiting Wang Jingwei's widowed wife and her brother-in-law's cells to say his goodbyes before entering the court. After the trial, Chen Gongbo requested to write a letter for his family and a letter for Chiang Kai-shek as his last words. Around 12 p.m., the letter to Chiang was unfinished when Chen Gongbo decided to stop writing, stating, "The supreme authority probably knows what to do. For someone about to die like me, what is said will probably be useless. I'd rather stop now. It is almost noon, and I don't want to delay your lunchtime." Chen Gongbo shook hands with the members of the court before being escorted to the execution grounds. There, he was shot once in the back of the head, with the bullet exiting through his right cheek. Chen Gongbo was dead, leaving behind the legacy of a traitor.
Even when considering Chen Gongbo's very political trial and execution, it is very easy from a modern perspective to continue to disregard him as simply a traitor. It is still important to consider what collaborators like Chen Gongbo and Wang Jingwei knew at the time of their careers and their decisions to collaborate. Collaborators like Chen Gongbo and Wang Jingwei had no idea what would happen to Japan in 1945 with the dropping of the atomic bombs and the empire's sudden surrender. As prior to those events, the Japanese Empire had shown consistent historical success in military victories and expansion, making the empire appear as a historically reliable power to collaborate with, despite China and Japan being culturally and militarily at odds. When considering Wang Jingwei and Chen Gongbo's writing, their supposed traitorous intentions become less clear-cut, as both of them write about willing to sacrifice their lives and reputations for what they consider to be the greater good for the Chinese people and nation. Leaders regarded as heroes like Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong were responsible for many worse atrocities in their careers than collaboration, like Chen Gongbo. Chen Gongbo had a comparatively much cleaner career before his reputation-defining decision to collaborate. Even his traitorous decision to collaborate could be understood as being in nationalist interests. especially when being made aware of his concern for the Chinese diasporic population in Japan and the Nanjing government's territories, made clear in his writings and speeches recorded from his Japanese tour. Considering the historical context that surrounded his career, it could be argued that Chen Gongbo had less traitorous intentions in mind when he decided to collaborate than what history and his modern reputation in China has made him out to be. Chen Gongbo had an obvious impact on my family with his death and reputation. Most immediately following his death, the obvious change in trajectory for Kan Chen having to leave behind his family in China, as Kan Chen arrived in the US the following year in 1947. Chen Gongbo also had an impact on Kan's faith, Kan crediting his father as what influenced him to become a Christian later in life after moving to the US. Kan wrote that his father, while still in prison, sent one of his last notes through a friendly prison guard to a family friend, saying if he ever had a chance to live through the current turmoil, he would likely become a Christian too. For later generations in the family, the importance of having access to and holding unpublished media and poems written by Chen Gongbo has played an integral part in keeping the family connected to Chen Gongbo's complicated legacy, and his writings make him a sort of post-mortem role model, striving for good in life and in death. Which begs the question, beyond being a simple trader, who really was Chen Gongbo?